Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
On my final episode of this mini-series.
Oh, this is the final.
Save the best for last.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Sports run deep in your family. You played lacrosse in college at BU. Your dad was on the U.S. men's national hockey team. Your mom was a speed skater. So you've definitely got the athletic genes. But how do you think your athletic background has helped you as a broadcaster?
That's a good question. Thank you for doing your research. My mom and dad will be very happy to hear. I think the biggest thing for me, playing sports my whole life, and it doesn't have to be collegiately. I think in our world, being around sports and being around athletes, the biggest advantage it has had for me is just understanding the team atmosphere and just the way a team works, right? With coaches and players. And I'd like to think for me, I can really sense coaches and their energy for interviews and players for interviews, because you know in those moments when you've grown up playing sports, when people want to talk, when they don't want to talk, when you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think for me, it's just been I've been around sports my whole life, so I think that's helped me have a good sense of understanding how it works. But just being from an athletic family, I think my dad was, my number one coach in life, and I knew I wasn't going to be a professional hockey player, I wasn't going to be a professional lacrosse player, and being a sideline reporter is, in my opinion, the closest thing to being a part of it. You get to experience the players and the action, and I get the same rush as a reporter that I got playing as a collegiate athlete. It's the same energy, and that's why I like it.
So you started off as a sideline reporter at Fox Sports North,
yes,
and then landed a role on FS1 when they launched. And your role has expanded quite a bit since you've gotten here, from being a sideline reporter to being the full-time moderator on Undisputed. But out of all of the roles that you've had, which do you feel has pushed you out of your comfort zone the most?
That's a really good question. And there have been a lot of different roles along the way. I think what I would say, and the advice I would give anyone, don't be afraid to take a job, or take a job in a sport that you don't know. Jacob Ullman, who works here, and I know you know him, he believed in me when I started at FS1, and I was just doing news updates. I mean, it was a pretty specific role, 30-second updates, and there were live moments, so there was stress in the role, but it wasn't an expanded sideline role. He had heard that I knew a bit about motorcycles, and by I say a bit, I mean I knew Ricky Carmichael was the GOAT, and I knew that because my brother was a fan. And he said, "Oh, you got the gig, let's do this, like you can do motorcycle sideline reporting." It was the most scared I have ever been, and I've covered a lot of really cool games, and I feel, I've worked World Cups, and I can't even believe I've been a part of these moments. But the first time I did a live hit for Supercross on FS1 was the most scared I have ever been in my life, because I figured, if I can do this, I can do anything. If I can cover a sport that I'm not familiar with, if I can go talk about the whoops and, different motorcycles, you can be a part of anything. And so for me, I think I called my parents and I said, I'm either going to make it in this, or I'm not doing sideline anymore. And it was the best challenge, and it was a good reminder that you just have to get the reps anywhere. It doesn't matter what you're covering, but I like to think that being a good sideline reporter is asking good questions and being good with people and doing your research and homework. And if you have that, you can do anything. You have to study. I studied motorcycles. I took a lesson, and I know how to ride now. So you find a way, but don't be afraid to take a role that might feel a little foreign. I know the most about ice hockey. I grew up playing. I never have covered it really. I've covered it a little bit, but it's just, you don't have to do something that you only know. So not to be afraid of those roles.
Well, speaking of foreign, a fun fact that not too many people knew about you until last year was that you were fluent in French, which served to be extremely beneficial because France ended up winning the World Cup. But how important is it to be versatile in this industry?
Oh, it's funny with the French, because who would have thought, right? My parents wanted to send me to a French immersion school when I was young in Minnesota, public school. Just so happened that we only spoke French. That was the public school I went to. And my mom always said it's going to pay off. And I think when the U.S. men didn't qualify for the World Cup in Russia, it was not a good moment around here. I mean, people were really disappointed, and you want to root for your country, and I think we were all worried, how will this play out without the U.S. having a presence? And I think for all of us, it just proved to be such a challenge, but a rewarding challenge, that we could still create great TV and cover these teams from a world perspective. And I think for me, getting to know the French national team just kind of happened. I covered a few games. I kept emailing them in French. They were like, they didn't believe me that I really spoke French. I think that was part of it. And it was out of my comfort zone. I had to brush up on my skills. But one quick story from that, I remember many of them speak French and English, right? Mm-hmm. So I had been trying to get an interview with Griezmann the whole tournament, and he agreed to do it. And I said, Antoine, can we do it in French or English? And I know he speaks English. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he kind of was like, French, let's do this in French, testing me. Like, can you actually do this in French? And I've never felt better than after getting that interview out. It was smooth, it went well, and then the next match I was able to interview Kylian Mbappe. And I think because I was able to do the one, they then told Mbappe that he could talk to us, and he hadn't talked to any American television networks at that time. So for me, that was cool to think that you can be versatile, but it doesn't have to be a foreign language. Just being able to go with the flow of this world, because you never really know, and you can prepare as much as you want for a game, for a match, but in the moment, don't be afraid to adjust, because things change always. So that was a good lesson.
Now, we may not all be able to be fluent in French just yet, for all of us galvanized girls, what would you say besides versatility is the biggest thing you'd say to all of us as we start on our broadcasting journeys?
I think the biggest thing is, and it sounds basic and kind of obvious, and I think so many of you are already doing it, but working hard and being good to people, treating people well. I think it goes a long way in the sports world, and you hear it in every industry, but knowing who you work with, knowing the security guard, and being thankful for the opportunity, but just being a good person to work with and be around. I think people want to work with people that they enjoy, and the other thing about this world is you're only really as good as your last report or broadcast, and it can be the best thing and the worst thing. If you make a mistake, it's over. But you have to always be pushing to be better, and I think in our world it keeps you on your toes, and you have to stay on top of your sports. And unfortunately, as a female in this world, I think sometimes you are held to a higher standard. Not that it's unfair. I think actually social media, everyone's held to a high standard, but in a lot of ways you are looked at in a little bit of a different light. I was not a professional football player, but that doesn't mean I don't know the game, and just staying on top of that, but being a good person and working hard will always be the right thing. And I still feel like that. I still feel like I have a lot to prove. I have a lot of goals that I haven't accomplished. It doesn't really stop. Like, once you get that job, a dream gig, there's going to be more. So just kind of staying hungry for more is always something I think about too.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for sitting down with me today, and I look forward to seeing you on the sidelines this fall.
I hopefully will have a game at K-State, and you can hang out with me. So thank you for chatting.